here's the funny thing, and I know this because I've written a lot of music, and when you aim at beauty, whatever it is that you're doing, you're writing a piece of music, you're writing a book, you're making a movie. When you aim at beauty, like I described, 9 times out of 10, all the other stuff comes with it. The
Mhm.
emotion, the it comes out good, people
Yeah.
like it, etc. You know, and when you aim at an emotional experience, or you
Hmm.
aim at being popular, or something like that, it falls flat.
Whenever the evangelical non denominational church is criticized on the internet, it is inevitable that worship music is brought up. You've probably heard it said that contemporary Christian music prioritizes keeping you entertained over spiritually nourishing you and giving glory to God alone. But that criticism seems to ignore much of the spiritual growth and good works that do come from the evangelical traditions. Why is music and the way that we worship God through it so contentious? To help discuss that topic today, I have a good friend of mine, Vinicius Barbosa. Vinicius, tell the viewers about yourself.
Thanks for having me, first of
Yeah.
all. Um,
What is your profession?
so I'm a composer for film and TV, which is a little unusual, I guess.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool,
First guest
actually.
that you've ever had that does this here, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I do. So
Very cool.
yeah.
So, what is your background? Just to kind of fill us in
Yeah.
spiritually.
Okay.
Where did you come from? What is
Cool.
your current tradition?
You want the long version? I'll give you the
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
version. So I was born and raised in Brazil, although my accent's gone.
Completely gone.
Completely. Yeah. We'll come back as we go. Um, but so I was born and raised in Brazil. I didn't really come from a particularly Christian household per se. Brazil's kind of a very Catholic country,
Mhm.
so there's always kind of like a cultural Catholicism, a little different than what you see here in the US. Um, but I never really kind of gravitated toward church as a kid.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I was 15, because that's when you know everything,
Hmm.
I decided that I was an atheist. I was like, God doesn't exist. Um, and I don't want anything to do with the church. I didn't really have a church hurt experience. A lot of people that I talk to
Yeah.
now, like, seems like that's what happened to them and made them kind of swear off church.
Mm.
That's not what happened to me. It was just kind of a careless, like, I just don't want to do this. That's like the way that I will rebel. I'm an atheist, not going to go to church, etc. And then I didn't really revisit that decision until almost 10 years after that. So, after finishing high school and so on, I moved to the US, where I am now with you guys.
Let's
Um,
go.
and the reason I moved here was because my dream is to write music for movies. That's
Hmm.
what I always wanted to do as a kid. And so I moved to the US. I studied that in college. Did you know you could go to college for that?
Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
You can.
I knew a few
Uh,
people that did that.
Did
Yeah.
you really? So I went to college for it in Boston. Um, and
And for the
then
audience, which university?
Berkeley College of
Ah,
Music.
yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
He went to Berkeley.
Flex,
everyone.
flex.
Um, so I went to college there and then moved to Southern California, and that's what I do now. So I'm working in the movie music industry. Okay, but to answer your question properly,
Yeah.
when I moved to LA, I still was an atheist. Like nothing changed while I was in Boston. Nothing changed kind of in the very beginning of when I was in LA. But when I moved here, I fell into a community of Christians. Like I had
Mhm.
never hung out with Christians before.
Which is kind of odd for LA.
It's a
Yeah.
little
Right?
strange. Yeah. Most people don't think God is there, but he is. I mean, the devil has a
City
lot
of
of property
Angels.
there too.
Yeah.
But, God's there too. So it was the first time that I was really hanging out with Christians. And I was like, man, people are pretty cool.
Yeah, right
You
on.
know? Um, and most importantly, the kind of the pivotal group of people that really did it for me. We've talked a few times about
Sure.
this off off the air. There's a family that put me up while I kind of first moved to LA and I was kind of getting my footing, and they were Christians.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember just kind of seeing how they lived,
Yeah.
and I had never seen that before.
Hmm.
Like it was just a beautiful family life. It wasn't like it was probably like the family life I'm assuming that most of you have had, um, but I hadn't really had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
So
unique to you.
It was unique, and I was like, my gosh, that's cool. Like is that the byproduct
This
of
is what
of this
Christians are like.
Jesus
Yeah.
life?
Yeah.
Um, and so it started getting the gears turning, and
Mhm.
then with this family, it was cool. There was like an unspoken rule. If you were staying at their house, you had to go to church with them.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
pretty good.
it was a good rule. I didn't like it, but I went.
Yeah.
So I went, and I was just kind of like pretty, how would you say it? Just like, you know, the kind of atheist that I like to sort of, deconstruct the
Mhm.
arguments, and I
Mhm.
watched all these
You're
like Sam
obstinate to
Harris, yeah,
the ca
videos.
yeah, the faith, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'd be going to church, and I'd be like listening to the pastor preach, and I'd be like, listening to the argument, going,
Yeah.
yeah, well, it's not really true, and so on. And then every now and again, something would kind of make sense in my
Yeah.
head.
Mhm.
Anyway, long story short, at some point I left this family's house to my own apartment, and I was like, okay, I'm done with the church thing. I don't need to go anymore because I don't live with them. Some time passed, and I had this kind of little quarter life crisis. Um, and then the first place that it made sense for me to go look again was Christianity. So I
Mhm.
was like, okay, I need to, maybe it's time to
Take this
revisit.
seriously, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's when I kind of officially began seeking,
Hmm.
Mhm.
you know, and it took me like a year to really, like, I went from atheist to theist, and then from theist to Christian. The theist to Christian lasted like 3 months,
Sure.
but the atheist to theist was like probably about 6 months or so.
Okay.
So it took a while.
Yeah.
I was very stubborn,
Cool.
still am,
Yeah.
but that's kind
So
of
where did you land up? Because you're not Catholic.
right.
So what church drew you in the most?
Back then, the church that I was going to was this kind of big non-denominational, like kind of Baptist-y
Mhm,
church.
mhm.
It's similar to what you've described to me.
Sure.
Your background is.
Yeah.
It was Grace Community Church. Are you guys familiar with that? John MacArthur's church.
Yeah,
Oh,
actually.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So so that's the first church because that's where all these people went.
Yeah.
And so I started going there, and it's very like, I don't know if you've listened to any MacArthur sermons.
Yeah.
He's passed
Yeah.
this year, I think. But he was very like, he was
He's
he was
forward.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
forward.
Strong.
He's strong.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed.
Yeah.
Like some
Yeah.
people need to be hugged into Christianity. I needed to be beaten into it.
Yep. Amen.
So that kind of did it for me. And then at some point I started asking a lot of the questions you guys ask on your stuff, which is, I always felt like there was something missing, like some deeper connection to what Christians have always been doing,
Yeah.
like the kind of worship that people have always been doing. I've always been very drawn to this kind of concept of capital B beauty, which maybe we'll talk
Mhm.
about today, but like the stuff that you get through music and through
Mhm.
liturgy and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
maybe you can also go into just like brief overview. What was Grace Community? What was the music like? What was the form of worship? Just
So
so we can get a
actually,
baseline.
it's interesting because their music really drew me in because it was very beautiful.
Mm.
They had a full orchestra every week.
Oh,
That's
very
really
cool.
and
cool.
and like a gigantic choir. It was excellent. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
It was like going to a concert every week,
Cool.
which was fantastic. And it's funny because maybe this is the first place for us to explore. Right before I became a Christian, when I was still an atheist, I visited a kind of non-denominational like church that had a band, like a
Mhm.
band,
Praise
it was
band,
a praise
yeah.
band. And I remember, no offense to the praise band, but I went in there and the music started and I walked out.
Really?
I did.
Wow.
I was like, I can't do this.
Wow.
walked
What
out.
was it about that moment? Like what was the turnoff
Yeah.
there?
So, remember, I was still an atheist.
Sure,
So
yeah.
it's not me now,
Yeah.
but I was, um, I had, first of all, it was probably just a general, what would you call it? A general stubbornness and arrogance,
Mm.
to set that all aside. I had a strong background in music,
Yeah.
and I just didn't think the band was very good.
Yeah.
Like I was like that band's not that good. Like I've walked out of like I've sat at way better concerts than this. I didn't
Right.
understand that what they were about to do was to worship.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that
Yeah.
looked like.
Well, it's about the quality more
Mm.
than the intent of it, right? At least from the atheist perspective.
Right, exactly. And I was like,
Sure.
this is bad music.
yeah.
So
Why
I'm
would
outta
you
here.
listen?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my time. So I just went to Denny's.
Yeah.
I did.
So I mean, there's kind of an interesting question in there of like as an atheist, as someone that we might mark as like seeker sensitive,
Yeah.
or you are a seeker
Mhm.
at a seeker sensitive church,
Right.
The the worship was not self-evident to you. You didn't really
Right.
it wasn't like, "Oh, this is the time for worship." It's
Right.
what's this
But the performance
band doing?
was.
Yes.
And the performance was not
The
to
performance
your
was
standard,
self-evident.
and you're a music composer, so you maybe have a higher
Sure.
standard. But
Probably.
lots
Yeah.
of people I know can spot bad worship.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What's your stance on CCM because of that?
Yeah. Well,
Mm.
and before we even get into that too, I want to have a common definition of what we mean by contemporary
Yeah,
Christian
that's good.
music,
That's a good idea.
because I want to clarify too that the this is intended on being an open dialogue about contemporary Christian music, not a hate party of
Right. Right.
CCM. But obviously, when people criticize CCM, they're not criticizing it for being contemporary. It's not the
Mm.
fact that it is new.
Mhm.
There is something somewhat unique about what we mean when we say contemporary.
Yeah.
Like everyone knows what you're talking about.
Right.
You walk into an evangelical non-denominational church, and that's contemporary Christian music. It's music written in the last decade.
Right.
That isn't necessarily the issue,
Right.
but
I guess for some it might be.
for
Right?
some it might be.
But maybe not for
When
everybody.
people identify an issue, it's not the fact that it's new.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that contemporary Christian music, though, does go hand in hand with the concept of pop music.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to,
sure.
just from your music background, how
Uh-huh.
would you define pop music?
Yeah.
because
okay.
that's a hard
easier for
thing.
me. Pop
Okay.
music is easier to define for me than CCM. Maybe I'll
Sure.
leave the CCM
Yeah.
question for Micah.
Yeah.
But for the pop music is just music that's popular.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's what it is. So it's whatever music is popular today.
Hmm.
That's pop music. And so that means the pop music of now is not the same pop music
Hmm.
of 20 years ago, of 50 years ago.
Think about jazz in the 60s.
It's exactly what I was gonna say.
Pop music.
Big band jazz is like was pop music back then, right?
Or that's even the 30s, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you go back and pop music is different every time, at every age. So that's pop music.
Sure.
Now you maybe you can talk better
Yeah.
about CCM and how that
For
ties
our
in.
viewers that don't totally know, I am a sound guy who has worked for specifically really big mega churches. And a lot of my growing up was in churches like that. I grew up going to a church that was smaller, but the same style.
Mhm.
And that led directly into my post high school years where I was mixing for a pretty big church that had a 24/7 house of worship.
Mhm.
And so there was constantly music going all the time, which is kind of a crazy feat.
It's
And I
wild.
wasn't one of
Yeah.
the midnight guys, but they had what's called the night watch. And that was the
That's cool.
crazy people that were crazy enough to stay up and play. They would have full bands at
Yeah.
3 in the morning and for 2-hour sets,
Yeah.
which is
That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing.
It
That's
almost
pretty
reminds me
incredible.
of like a 24-hour adoration
Totally.
chapel where you're
Uh-huh.
like, there's always worship going.
Right.
Yeah.
Or there's
Well,
always prayer or
and
something.
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
you know
always
what's
prayer.
funny is the language they used to describe the prayer room is very
Similar to
similar.
an adoration.
Yeah,
to
it's
that.
reminiscent of
we could do a whole
adoration.
podcast on
We
that
should.
one.
But I got my not 10,000 hours, but you know the saying, you get a lot of experience in
Right.
something just by doing it. And so that's kind of my background on worship specifically. So
Mhm.
I have a very niche skill
Right.
in worship music and specifically working with worship music.
Right. And making the CCM sound, right? That's
Totally.
like the the auditory textures that you get
Mhm.
when you listen to that stuff. That's your wheelhouse.
And
Right.
what's funny is the evolution of CCM is pretty evident. It's contemporary
Mm.
music for a reason, but we've seen that evolve. And it's not like a hymnal where it's very static, right?
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
wrote Amazing Grace, I can't
Mm.
remember his name, back in the
Yeah.
day, and that hymn has stayed the same. And even though people may add instrumentation,
Mm.
it is the same song at its
Right.
core, and you can just sing it, and people know what
Uh-huh.
you're singing.
People know Amazing Grace.
So would you
yeah.
say, is it okay if I interrupt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that the thing that we call CCM now and the thing that people called CCM like 20 years ago is not the same thing?
It's really not.
Right.
You
So it's
look
the
at
same
just
as
the
pop,
bands.
right? It's
It
the
is.
same as pop in that sense.
It's almost synonymous. Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
look back to the Jesus People movement with somebody like Keith Green. Keith
Mhm.
Green was writing every song in the key of D or G
Mm-hmm.
because everybody would just know how to
Everyone
play
would
those
know it,
songs.
Yeah.
And that goal is still the same.
Yeah.
People should be able to play Christian contemporary music, and the instrumentation for that Christian contemporary music is really important.
Mhm.
Think electric guitars, think big drums with
Uh-huh.
coated heads that are lots of reverb to
Yeah.
fill the space.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you're forced to use something like tracks to get that into the into the realm of Christian contemporary music.
Uh-huh.
So those tracks are almost needed now, where 15 years ago they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Classic example, the Vineyard Church of Laguna Niguel, where I work often, they refuse to switch to tracks.
Explain
because
what tracks
they
is
won't.
for
Oh,
people
my
who don't
bad.
know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when
For the people at home.
for the people at home, you'll have a live band and you'll play additional music alongside the live band. So you'll have a click track, which is keeping them in tempo, and you'll have additional tracks like background vocals, like additional guitars,
Mhm.
synthesizers that add to the music.
Mhm.
And nowadays you need that, which plays into the evolution of
Mhm.
what Christian contemporary
Yeah, that's
music
interesting.
is. And so it leads me to say your experience of CCM is dependent on a couple people doing their job right. The
Mhm.
worship leader, the sound guy, band members. And if they're not doing their job right, or even if you're just missing tracks, it's not going to feel like the experience you're
Yeah.
expecting.
Yeah.
And so that specific curation of the modern version of Christian contemporary music is what we're defining.
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
is specifically what we're talking about. And it's different than something
Mhm.
like, I don't even know, even Chris Renzema, like I brought up earlier,
Mhm.
or Forrest Frank.
Yeah.
That's not worship music for whatever
Right,
reason.
right.
And maybe you can speak to that because I haven't worked with orchestras
Yeah.
like that. And so, how does that worship to you differ in emotion to Christian contemporary music?
Yeah.
And what do you think about it? What's your
Okay.
take?
The difference between something like the contemporary Christian music that you would
Exactly.
hear at church,
Exactly.
and then like something like a Forrest Frank type thing.
Mhm.
Is that what you're
Mhm.
saying?
Well,
It's
and is there a difference?
and is there a difference?
There
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference in style, right? Like maybe that's the easiest one to get out of the way. Like there's a difference in style between music that is intended to be used as worship and then music that's not, right? I
Mhm.
would say.
No,
So
definitely.
so one of the things, like musically speaking, that is usually nice to have in a worship song is like things that are easily singable by people who aren't singers.
Hmm.
Not just because the band might be people who come in and are volunteering, because the congregation's singing together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So that's why it's like really easy to sing those hymns. Those old hymns are like really nice. They usually stick within a pretty limited
Mhm.
range.
Sure.
Mhm.
It's easy to sing. The melodies are sticky.
Easy to remember.
They're
easy to
not in
remember.
weird keys, so
They're not
everybody
in a-
can play it
Exactly,
on
yeah.
the piano.
So there's something there, which I guess it's in a way there's a parallel there between what you were saying with CCM.
Mhm.
It's music that's easier for people to sing, like
Mhm.
anybody. Okay, but what you asked was the difference between that and something like a Forrest Frank or music that you listen to
Mhm.
without necessarily worshiping. I'll throw out my first theological take if I can here. You guys are the
Please.
theology guys, but I'll throw my first theological take, which is I think all music, regardless of style, intent, etc., all music can be worship,
Mm.
and all music can be not worship.
Hmm.
That's my theological take. You know?
I see where you're getting with
So
this.
okay, so I mean this opens up an interesting conversation because I think that nobody would really say like Forrest Frank sings about Jesus.
Jesus.
He sings in a worshipful manner.
Yeah.
He is giving God his worthship, right? But nobody would. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a pastor that would say, "Let's bring Forrest Frank into the worship
For
service,
sure.
into the
For
into
sure.
the church, right?
But Phil
let's play
Wickham, you would.
Phil Wickham, you would.
Yeah.
So there's something that that is self-evident in the difference between those two, like the contemporary Christian music that you would allow through the doors,
Mhm.
and then the Forrest Frank that you would say, well, it's good. It's not
Mhm.
like it's secular music,
Right.
but we're gonna listen to that on the way to church, not in church, right?
Mhm.
And then it's an interesting question of where we draw that line,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
how we draw that line is really important,
Yeah.
I want to add, you said all worship could be worship music or not.
or all
It could.
music,
It-
yeah.
all
could
music
be.
could be and could not.
Would you say that it's in the eyes of the beholder then? Because if there's a fundamental line, okay, so then explain. I'm
Okay.
so curious.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So I don't think it's in the eye of the beholder. That what you're bringing up is that age old question of is beauty in the eye of the beholder, right?
Mhm.
So when there's a beautiful piece of music or a beautiful painting or whatever, um, the 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 deciding factor of whether or not it's beautiful relies on you,
Mm.
the viewer and the
The
experience,
interpreter.
the interpreter. I think that is not the case. I think beauty is always something that um, you what's the word I'm looking for? It's something
You
that you
ascend
strive
to.
towards. Yeah,
Yeah.
you ascend to. And so It's difficult to define, but
Hmm.
it is, for all intents and purposes here in this conversation, is a fixed thing that comes from
Yeah.
somewhere.
Beauty is
Comes,
objective.
it's subjective.
We
It
have a
comes from
subjective
God.
experience of the beauty, but the beauty
That's
is
right.
objective. Yeah.
So that's the key difference. That's why people, I think, get that wrong. The beauty itself is objective. Our experience is subjective. We have tastes.
Yeah.
We have stuff that we like. We have stuff that we don't like. All this stuff, right?
Right.
So that plays in a conversation there. So that's one thing. Now, okay, the idea with the worship music. Let's even extend your difference. So you said, there's the music, like there's the contemporary Christian music that you do at church.
Mhm.
And that's obviously, we can use that at church and we can use that for worship. And then let's go even further and say, what about like the score for the Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
That's not worship music. That was not intended to be written as worship music. The guy who wrote it wasn't thinking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? The guy who wrote the book was, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Let's put that aside
Sure.
for a sec. The guy who wrote that music was not thinking about Jesus. I've used that music in my own personal at
worship,
home,
yeah.
in my personal worship, right?
Mhm.
And the reason why is because that music is beautiful.
Mm.
Anything that's beautiful ever belongs to God.
Yeah.
And comes from God
Amen.
in a sense, right? So that's what I mean by that. That's what I mean by any of these things can be
objective beauty
worshipful.
and yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. So, question, is there in your mind a definition of music that is not beautiful?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, what is that?
It's
We're gonna need names and tracks.
who,
specifically.
Specific
who are we gonna
songs,
throw under the
actually.
bus here?
Yeah.
I think there's music that it's okay. Let me do a disclaimer because I like disclaimers.
Yeah, very good.
It's important to differentiate music that is unpleasant to or dissonant. Let's say that is dissonant from music that is ugly. Okay,
Dissonant music can be beautiful.
dissonant music can be very beautiful.
Hmm.
For those who are not musical, maybe I'll make an analogy of dissonant, other art that is dissonant. Is everybody familiar with the Pietà, that beautiful sculpture of Mary holding Jesus that I think is in the Sistine Chapel or
Yes.
something
Yeah.
like that, right? Dead Jesus, like it's the ugliest
It's
thing there is.
very moving. Yeah,
It's the
ugly.
it's the ugliest thing there is in the sense, like, actually that's not the right word. It's the most dissonant thing there is.
Yeah.
It's
You look at
moving.
that
Yeah.
and it moves, but because of that dissonance, it moves you to tears. It's so
Mm.
beautiful. It stuns you into silence. It's like beautiful.
Mhm.
So a dissonant thing that provokes in you unpleasant feelings can be beautiful, right? So let's get that out of the way. Then you have music or art that is just ugly, like ugly on purpose.
Mm.
Easier to do with architecture. Let's go there first. Like this kind of like brutalist architecture,
Yeah.
right?
Have
Where
you seen The Brutalist? It's a movie.
I have not.
It's
not.
actually really
Okay,
good,
I
but it
haven't
goes
seen
into this specifically.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. I'd love to see that. That's a great actor. The guy who's
He's
the main actor.
amazing.
Fantastic. But brutalist architecture, which for all intents and purposes are like those gray buildings
Yeah.
that are, you go in there and you kind of feel like you're locked, like you're a
Right.
mouse,
It's sharp and it's like
right.
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah. And then you guys have been going to all these beautiful cathedrals,
Sure.
right? And so on. You enter that and immediately
The
there's
beauty
some-
is self-evident.
there's
Yeah.
something that exactly, it's self-evident. It doesn't have to be explained. That's how
Mhm.
beauty works, by the way. That's
Or
why it's
to a point, it can't be explained.
it can't
It's
be
like
explained.
so
That's right.
self-evident that it's like I couldn't even bring this into
That's
words.
correct.
Yeah.
Well, it's because beauty isn't truth.
Yeah.
If it was truth,
Hmm.
it would be truth. It's beauty doesn't use the tools of truth to communicate to
Yeah.
you the things that it does.
Capital B.
Capital B, and capital T.
Hey.
But it's self-evident, right? And
Sure.
and so when you enter one of these cathedrals, bam,
Right.
Yeah.
you know it in your bones, and I guess to an extent you feel it.
Mhm.
But I like to stay away from feeling language because feeling language is tricky. I think we
Sure.
use feeling language to define a lot of things, and it can get us into tricky situations.
Yeah.
So let's set that aside. I think music that's ugly is, if we were to define it or kind of, I'll throw a style in there. Has anybody ever heard free jazz? Does
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
you know,
I love jazz.
so I love jazz too. And there's regular jazz like the
And then
Miles
there's free
Davis, and,
jazz.
so, and then there's
And
free
there's free
jazz.
jazz.
And I went to a jazz school. Berkeley was a jazz school. And some people that went to free jazz and into like the weirdest, strangest types of music that you listen to it and it's unpleasant and meaningless
Hmm.
to listen to. Are you seeing where I'm going
Yes.
at here?
Yeah.
So I think there's something about Um, s when it's unpleasant and meaningful,
Hmm.
that's one thing.
That's conveying an emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then there's music that's just unpleasant kind of for its own
Mm.
sake, you know? It's notoriously difficult to define. That idea of how do we draw a scale and say here up to here it's beautiful, up to here it's like okay, and then down here at
Sure.
like a 0 it's ugly. It doesn't
Yeah.
work as mathematically because this is not a science, it's an
Yeah.
art
You could do a whole master's thesis on this
on
concept.
this. Yeah. There's a famous movie scene. Have you guys seen the Dead Poets Society?
No.
I haven't. Yeah,
Oh,
no.
man. Okay. For those of you at home, Dead Poet Society, there's a scene, a lot of people are familiar with this. The Robin Williams
Yeah.
character,
Yeah.
right? He comes in and he opens up this book, right? And he's teaching poetry.
Mhm.
The subject of his class is poetry. He opens up the book and he goes, "Okay, everybody, open to page number 1 of the book." And basically that page was trying to define the beauty of a poem on a scale. He goes on the blackboard and he draws a scale and he's like, if the poem, it's this important and this well made, then it's got this much on the scale and it's this
Mhm.
beautiful. And he was like, I want you to rip out that page because this is not we're not laying pipe. This isn't like
Mhm.
we can't look at beauty in this way that's so um
Rigid
precisely
and
and rigid. That's not
it's not
how
a
it
science.
works.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's how truth works,
Yeah.
right? But beauty works in a different way. Beauty is more elusive.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's more numinous, right? It's got this kind of quality to it that's difficult to grasp.
Sure.
I think that's one of the cool things about it. I think that's why we keep coming back to it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why beauty, um, when you listen to a beautiful piece of music or you enter a beautiful cathedral, if you know nothing about God, it goes right at your heart
You
and it
immediately
starts
understand it. Yeah.
it starts stirring it, right?
Yeah.
It does what C.S. Lewis called the longing,
Mm.
Mm.
right? It makes you long for something. You don't know what it is if you don't have the language to explain
Oh,
it. That's
yeah.
where truth comes in.
Yeah.
But it makes you start longing.
Yeah.
That's 100% part of my conversion
Mm.
experience. For years and years of my life, when I was telling you that I was 15 and I was an atheist, when I was decided that I was an atheist, was also the same time I really started getting into music. And I was just like taking in music
Mm.
like by the pound, and I knew that it was beautiful, and I knew that it was stirring me in some way. I couldn't describe to you how,
Yeah.
but it was like I had closed the door on God, and He came in through the window. He was
Right.
like,
He always does.
I'm gonna still work on you,"
That guy.
and He did it through a language that I could understand.
Sure.
Which
To
was
me,
music.
it was the language of music, and He communicated His
Mm.
beauty to me like that. And then fast forward when I told you about really kind of seeking when I was in my early 20s. Um, that's when I started approaching God from a more sort of intellectual place.
Sure.
To my surprise, it was like there was all this groundwork that had already been laid out by Him through the ways that I experienced Him in beauty. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
does make sense.
You know?
And like, okay, to bring that back to like our discussion on contemporary Christian music, I think that there's an overall perception, and this is where a lot of the criticism comes from, that contemporary Christian music in the context of like non-denominational
Uh-huh.
praise bands, I think people would mostly say that it is devoid of inherent beauty,
I
of
see.
self-evident
I see.
beauty. And maybe in the anecdote that you even shared, uh, as an atheist, you can still the beauty is self-evident of
For
God,
sure. You
right?
can still see it.
But the beauty was not there.
Mm.
Why do you think that there's this perception, and maybe it's a false perception, maybe it's a very real perception pointing to something,
Yeah.
but why is there this perception that contemporary Christian music is devoid of inherent beauty?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that it is devoid of inherent beauty. Um, I would say kind of much like pop music. So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to talk about it without going back to pop music.
I
but
think it's important to bring it back
It is
to pop music.
it is pop music. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the goal of pop music is a very good goal. The goal of pop music is to try. It's kind of like distilled music. So it's you try to use the least amount of elements possible to communicate the
Mm.
maximum
Mhm.
amount of information.
Hmm.
Like
It's simplified.
it's
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
simplified.
In melody, in lyric,
Right.
in
Chord
language,
progressions.
totally. Chord progressions, they're all the same.
The whole thing.
keys even. You don't want to
Right.
use some weird
And I love
It's identifiable, memorizable.
yes.
It feels safe.
earworm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and look,
earworm.
I love pop music. Like, I'm a huge fan of I don't know, it's not pop music anymore, I guess, because it's a little older. I'm a huge John Mayer fan. I love
Sure,
John Mayer.
yeah.
John Mayer was pop music 10 years ago.
Yes.
I love John Mayer. I love John Mayer. I mean, sometimes I'll like if you catch me, at my worst moments, I am in my car listening to Billie Eilish. Like she's fantastic.
Totally.
Yeah.
She is great. Her brother
100%.
Phineas, who's like the
Genius
producer,
producer.
genius producer, and that's pop music. It's stripped down and it communicates the kind of the most amount of information possible.
Mhm.
Now, my only guess at your question is that
Yeah.
that process is really easy to screw up. It's
Yeah.
very easy to remove the good stuff, the nutrients out of the meal,
Mhm.
and then serve to you like just kind of boiled water.
Yeah. Well, and then
Right.
I think from that, because we brought up that contemporary Christian music, CCM, has gone through eras of like it's
Right.
kind of synonymous with pop music,
Yeah.
where well, that contemporary Christian music isn't popular anymore.
Yeah.
I even watched I saw a reel the other day that was it was just kind of like a fun reel of like, remember this Christian music from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh, it's a
Chris
throwback. I haven't heard that one in a
Tomlin.
while.
Yeah.
But it's like there's a reason we're still singing Amazing Grace and some of these like timeless hymns
Yeah.
in church in churches.
Yeah. And here's the reason.
Yeah.
Real beauty lasts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Real beauty lasts. It sticks with you and time comes in and beats it and it stays.
Yeah.
Right? And some of those hymns, they survive this long because they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people and beauty has to do with being memorable too.
Mhm.
Like people remember it, people get moved when they sing it and so on. The contemporary Christian stuff, what it doesn't have that some of these hymns have is time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like they haven't had the time
They're
element.
new.
They're
Like
new,
quite literally.
You know, it might be the
Yeah.
case that in 50 years we're going to look back at some of these early 2000 stuff and go, man, that was really a golden age.
Well, and once upon a time, even Amazing Grace was
Was a
contemporary.
new song. Exactly.
Every hymn
Yeah.
was once
That's right.
contemporary. And I guess maybe the differentiator is some of these songs have stood the test of time.
Exactly.
And we haven't seen some of the music of the modern era
Yeah.
stand that same test. And
That's right.
perhaps that is the influence of the current pop music
Uh-huh.
into Christian music as well.
Yeah.
And
Do you
actually, I want to clarify, I love CCM.
Yeah.
Like Bethel made my top 5 on Spotify.
This
like
year?
this year.
Yeah.
Let's
And
go.
that's not like because I play it on my phone all the time for like church.
Uh-huh.
That's like
You just
'cause I
listen to it yourself.
Listen to it because I actually genuinely enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's also work. I kind of need to know what to mix
What's
it
going
like.
on.
But
Sure.
but I do just genuinely think that some of their songs are phenomenal.
And I agree. It's true. Some of those songs are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just to throw it out there.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so like I think we've gotten to a good point with talking about just inherent beauty and
Mhm.
about like whether songs can stand the test of time.
Yeah.
But we haven't really gotten to this question of why are some of these songs that sing about Jesus, why are they not brought into church? Is there something
Mm.
specific about like let's just take a step back
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if we were let's say we're writing a new worship song
Right.
that we want to stand the test of time and we want to be to make sense in a church context.
Yeah.
How would we do that? And what do we want to hit?
Asked like an engineer.
I have a small comment on that.
Yeah.
Just because I think part of our problem is the expectations that we put
Uh-huh.
into church.
Hmm.
If we are going into a church expecting a certain thing,
Mm.
and that expectation is not met, then we will walk out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
If we're expecting the music to sound good, then that's the result that you're gonna want, or it's not
Hmm.
gonna serve you, right?
Yeah.
And with contemporary Christian music specifically, orchestras are amazing. But if you go in expecting, Bethel music playing,
Yeah.
you might be mildly
You
disappointed.
will probably.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there isn't inherent beauty in the
Mhm.
orchestra. There is, but CCM specifically, just it requires a specific enough genre of music
Sure.
that most music doesn't fit that box,
Yeah.
and even most Christian music doesn't fit that box.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about, okay, well, why isn't some of this in the church? Maybe our expectations have something to do with that.
Probably. Yeah.
And maybe it's man, we've been focusing a lot on the genre of contemporary.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it really has more to do with the form of I guess contemporary churches in the just kind of this new era of non-denominational churches where they have kind of taken the liturgy and said, the way that we're going to do church now is, 3 worship songs at the beginning. We're going to
Mhm.
do our sermon and then end with a worship song. And a couple elements that changed there is that generally, I don't generally want to generalize about these traditions, but they have removed the altar and put a stage
Right.
and put the praise band at the
At the
center.
center.
That and then that kind of inherently says something about our priorities.
Yeah. Yeah. We
right?
go in there expecting a concert.
Totally.
And so that makes it so that the focus of the worship is frankly on the quality of the band.
Yeah.
And I think that we can run into a lot of issues with even smaller churches saying that like it's maybe more difficult to make contemporary Christian music sound good
Mhm.
than
Mhm.
the traditional
you
hymns.
have no
Yeah.
idea.
I
Right.
have no idea.
Yeah. This guy.
His
knows.
whole profession is making bands sound good, and these are often volunteers.
Yeah.
They're often people that get one practice session during the week.
Mhm.
It's often very hard for churches to
Yeah.
make that happen, and
They all have real jobs.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're engineers.
Yeah.
And
Let me throw there's something I want to throw as a backdrop here.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's another question, but it has to do with what you're saying. In terms of the music that we expect to listen to and so on. Okay. Let's do a trip back in history.
Oh.
Go all the way back like to the biblical times.
oh boy.
Or even to like medieval times, like 1000 or
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
Let's go all the way back there. And you're like a guy who works on a farm or something, and you're
You're
all
a
day.
serf.
You're a serf. There we go. You're a serf. And you're working on your farm or whatever, and
Mhm.
you're doing your stuff. And it's, the next day is going to be a Sunday, so you're going to go to church the next day. The entire time that you were working throughout the week, there is no music,
Mm-mm.
right?
Unless you
Ba-
make it yourself.
Well, and
Singing in the
ba-
fields.
exactly, unless you
Yeah.
sing and you make it yourself. But back in that time, there's no music anywhere, right? You're just working. And the only time you would listen to music, like actual music made by people, church. So that means inevitably music and worship are tied together a little bit more
Intrinsically.
intrinsically
Yeah.
than they are now. Because if now fast forward to now, right? You go around, you go to Target, Christmas
Music.
you're in
Yeah.
your car, music.
Music,
You're
Yeah.
watching a movie, there's music.
pop music too.
Pop music, and there's all kinds of music.
Secular
sure.
music.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, there's pop music that like the kind of pop music we're accustomed to listening to. That's the backdrop of where we're at now, right? So I guess the question is, is it our duty when we're making music at church? Do we have any duty to sound different than what's going on? Do we have any duty to sound the same
Yeah.
as what's going on? And how does that? What does that look like? Well, how does
That's
that
a really
affect
good
us?
question. And I think inherently it should sound a little bit different. I think the thing that's revolutionized what you're talking about is the advent of recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as an engineer, maybe you know some of this technology,
Yeah.
but wax back in the
Yeah.
day
Mhm.
didn't sound particularly good. And throughout the years, we've moved from that. Music became really popular for the general person
Right.
after the vinyl record and really the shellac disc. And like being able to record music at a high level and distribute it in the masses for that low price completely changed the way that we view music.
Yeah, man.
So the way that we view worship has to
Mhm.
change as well. And it's interesting that the timing even coincides the 60s and 70s of the first CCM bands, if
Yeah.
you will, like the Keith Greens, happens to be in that same time period.
Yeah. Well, it might be helpful too to discuss a tradition that has never changed, presumably, which is the Orthodox tradition.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which the way that they do music, they actually don't bring instruments
Mhm.
into. Well, I know like Coptic brings in
Sure.
some cymbals
But
and,
voices.
and things, but
Mostly vocal.
they only do vocals
Mhm.
in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and that's purposeful.
Yeah.
They don't bring in instruments for that reason because there's theology in that of our voices are the instrument that God gave us,
Right.
so we're going to use that to praise Him.
Mhm.
But what is it about Orthodox chanting, about Orthodox worship that presumably has always been different from the
Mhm.
world? I would think that the reason that the Orthodox do most things is because it's nothing like the world.
Uh-huh.
It's supposed to be heaven on earth.
Right.
And they're kind of on the other end of that spectrum
Yeah.
of we're not going to look like the world at all,
Hmm.
rather than some evangelical megachurches that are saying we want to look like the world to bring people in.
Right. Right.
What is it about only having our voices uh, in chapels with acoustics in the ceiling
Hmm.
that seems to be standing the test of time
Yeah.
a lot better than contemporary music
Yeah. So
does?
that's interesting. First, I think going back to that little scenario that we were thinking about,
Yeah.
I would assume that a lot of the music that people did in the early church was this kind of vocal
Yeah.
music, right?
Maybe
Gregorian
even
chant
working in the
comes from
fields,
that,
Yeah.
they're
right?
chanting. Yeah.
Gregorian chant is not even that old. Like Gregorian
Yeah.
chant comes in kind of the medieval times. Um, but if you go even further back, I'm assuming a lot of this stuff was vocal.
Mhm.
Not all of worship music has always been vocal, right?
Sure.
If you look at the Psalms and David's talking about playing the lyre and the harp and the whatever. Um, but that scenario we were talking about, the music at church is it's very easy to make it sound different than the world because the world is silent. Like there's no
Mhm.
music out in the world, right? At least for the most part. At least there's not as much music as there is now.
Well, and there certainly wouldn't be organs in your average pub.
Exactly. That's right. And so it's a little bit easier to sound different than the world. And then I think uh, one of the things that the Orthodox do very well, and these kind of more traditional
Mhm.
uh, uh,
Apostolic churches, you could
apostolic
say. Yeah.
and kind of more liturgical churches, even like the Catholic Church, for example, what they do um, is that it seems to me that whenever they develop a technology or they develop a way to kind of enhance the worship, they always kind of cut with the grain
Mm.
of the way that we are made.
Mhm.
You know, so you were saying, you know, the reason that people started singing is because singing is the instrument that God gave us, and that's 100% right. You
Yeah.
know, it's like that's the first instrument anybody ever discovers. You know,
Hmm.
is singing. It's like the first
It's the one God
instances.
literally created you with.
That's correct, and it's like the first instances of music that you see are all vocal music
Mhm.
at first, right? Um, Arguably vocal and percussion because percussion is very easy to make,
Right.
but vocal comes really fast. And so that's kind of natural. You're going with the grain of
Mhm.
how human beings are made. Then the big cathedral you mentioned, right? The cathedrals with these acoustics that are
Yeah.
wonderful and so on, that also is leaning into creation, right?
Mhm.
Same as what you're doing with the voices. You're leaning into creation so that your musical experience is enhanced.
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily sure that they thought of it in these specific
Yeah.
terms, but I think they noticed. They just noticed, oh,
Yeah.
this is causing something. There's an effect here. This is working. You
In
know.
that line of thinking, I actually have a question for you. I feel as though modern worship music, CCM, is geared towards curating a certain emotional experience,
Yes.
like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Should we desire that curation? Is that something we
Mm,
should strive for? What do you think?
I don't think so.
No.
I think um, I think that the emotional experience it's good if it happens, but I think it should come as a byproduct.
Hmm.
And
Of
I'm
the
not
beauty.
of beauty.
Yeah.
I think the aim should be beauty, or another way to say that is that the aim should be to present your offering for God
Hmm.
of your
Mhm.
music. That's the same thing as saying aiming at beauty. It's
Right.
those are the same
Yeah.
concepts. And I think all the other stuff should come as a byproduct. And here's a funny thing, and I know this because I've written a lot of music. And when you aim at beauty, whatever it is that you're doing, you're writing a piece of music, you're writing a book, you're making a movie. When you aim at beauty, like I described, 9 times out of 10, all the other stuff comes with it. The
Mhm.
emotion, the it comes out good, people
Yeah.
like it, etc. You know, and when you aim at an emotional experience, or you
Hmm.
aim at being popular, or something like that, it falls flat.
Well,
It's just like
okay, and
doesn't
that
happen.
brings up an interesting question because I think what we were talking about with the Orthodox Church, maybe this is probably just a caricature of these two traditions, but the Orthodox Church is very much we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're worshiping God in the purest form,
Hmm.
and with that comes self-evident beauty. I think we can all agree that the Orthodox divine services are objectively beautiful.
100%.
Um, and with it's like if that attracts you, then that's great. You're attracted to God's objective beauty.
Right.
I think on the other end of that, with kind of the seeker sensitive model
Hmm.
with worship, there's kind of been this idea that like we to attract people in, we should make music that is geared towards them.
Right.
That's maybe sounds more like pop music.
Yeah.
That's more, and it's probably geared towards bringing young people back into the church, right?
Right. Which is
That
ironic,
there's probably,
given
I
what's
mean,
happening now.
you probably
The
have to have a
sudden
whole
swing.
history
Yeah.
degree to actually understand the evolution of contemporary Christian music.
Mhm.
But I think there is this idea that we wanted to change the way we did worship to attract young people. So
Yeah.
we make it sound more approachable. We
Mhm.
make it sound more memorizable,
Right.
and
Popified.
maybe the theology becomes less deep in the
I was gonna
lyrics
say
too.
worship's not the only thing that gets changed to
Yeah,
attract young people,
it's
right?
lyrically
It's the
it can
lyrics.
change
and,
too.
and even outside of just the worship part of the service, the sermon, I think, gets a little watered down,
It's true.
right? The
Seeker
communion,
sensitive models.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of things get watered down, not just worship, not just the music part of the service, but all the other elements
Yeah.
as well, right? And the reason I said that was ironic, for me personally, it was ironic, but I think the reason I'm bringing my personal story is because I think it's a symptom of a whole. I approached, when I was an atheist in my early 20s, not very long ago, I approached this church stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Churchies.
and like I saw these kind of watered down seeker sensitive things,
Yeah.
and and like that didn't seem attractive to me at all. That looked exactly like what I was already doing.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of the style of the music, but what they were preaching.
Yeah.
Like it required nothing of me, absolutely nothing. I
You
could come in,
are sitting there.
I was enough, and I didn't have to change, and the music didn't challenge me, and the sermon didn't challenge me, and the theology didn't challenge me. Everything was like, no, you're good as the way you are. And then I went to a different church that required a lot of me.
Mm.
That was more traditional, at least as far as evangelical
Yeah.
churches go. And the sermons themselves really challenged me. It was like, if you're not with us, if you're not doing what we're doing, and if you're not following Jesus, it's not going to look very good for you.
Mhm.
And that got me thinking. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So that's very different than my life,
Mhm.
right? And the reason I'm saying that's kind of a symptom of a whole is that, ironically, I think churches have been doing all this stuff to try to attract young people,
Yeah.
and young people are
And now
flocking
all
to
of a
the
sudden,
most
yeah.
traditional stuff
The
that you can
Eastern
think of.
Orthodoxy,
Right,
the
or
Catholicism.
Or even
like very
traditional hymns.
traditional
I
hymn.
mean, yeah.
And that's I've always been attracted to that. It's
Yeah.
I just didn't go into
Yeah.
the Catholic and the Orthodox, although I considered it, but I stuck with the kind of Protestant world.
Mhm.
You're
Um,
Presbyterian, right?
I'm Presbyterian, yeah.
Yeah.
And I found I flirted hard with Anglicanism, but
Many
still do
do.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And I go, oh. But I found in the Presbyterian Church a lot of this stuff. It's very it seems to me to be very rooted theologically, for sure. Not always worship wise, but in many ways very, very rooted to something that I didn't have in my life as an atheist. As an
Mm.
atheist, I was just like, what I have is what's current,
Yeah.
and I wanted something different. And going to a traditional church service and a traditional liturgy and sermon and so on, it it immediately made itself apparent that I was very small and that I was in
Yeah.
the presence of
Yeah.
something much, much larger.
Oh man.
Really quick, I want to
Yeah.
I want to speak on that a little bit. Uh, you mentioned that the curation is something that took you away, and I think
Yeah.
that curation is what is leading to a lot of people go into the traditional styles. Like you're led
Yeah.
to, funnily enough, Capital CMG owns
Uh-huh.
45% of music. Essential Music by Sony owns another 23%. So just within those two brands, 68% of all Christian music,
Mhm.
specifically CCM, is owned by big brands.
Yes.
And they're curating music.
Yeah.
And I think that when you view it from that lens, it's so much easier to see why people are moving away.
Yeah.
Even now, the common mindset is I can steal from Target.
Yeah.
They're a big store.
Uh-huh.
They'll recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is that the right mindset we should be having? I don't know. There's a movement I feel away from the like curated side of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The manufactured experience and towards something traditional and
Yeah.
authentic feeling.
Yeah.
Something that's moving
Authenticity.
you with beauty.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
authenticity is kind of the key word
It's
there.
the
I think.
2025 word, I think.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think people. Again, it's like you could do an entire podcast on just dissecting this concept of people being kind of sick of being sold to.
Yeah.
Of like
Yeah.
the knowledge that 68% of the worship, the music that you call worship is owned by by
By a
private
big brand,
companies,
yeah.
by a big brand that's trying to curate and
Right.
sell to you, that's trying to create earworms
Yeah.
that you listen to.
That
I
sell.
think I
It
I
feels
just
very machine-like
It
it feels
is.
rather
very
than
machine
just
like,
the
not
local,
Mhm.
the nitty-gritty of this is our community, this
Mhm.
is what we look like and what we sound like and so on.
well,
And that's not true of all music.
For sure.
Bethel
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
is there's lots of independent
Yeah.
people that are doing really great work.
Sure.
So no
100%.
knocking any like everybody.
But it's a reality,
Yeah.
and you touched on something too, that as an atheist, there was something larger than yourself
Yeah.
that was self-evident. You are partaking in something,
Mhm.
you are ascending to something.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think with that, a word that has been in my mind for a while is this idea of reverence.
Yeah.
That I mean, maybe I can ask this question of you. Do you think that the reverence is clearly present in the Catholic,
For
Orthodox,
sure.
even Anglican, Lutheran traditions?
Mhm.
But do you think that reverence is present in contemporary churches?
Wow. That's a good question. Um, I'm gonna I'll take the sidestep and say that sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't.
Sure, yeah,
Right.
probably hard to
And I
answer.
think,
Yeah.
but I think there's an easy way to say it, to tell. If it feels like a concert, if it feels like the people that are up there are making it about themselves,
Mm.
and it feels like they're trying to emotionally manipulate you with the
Mm.
music and make you feel something
Yeah,
like really hard, I don't think there's reverence.
yeah,
And if it doesn't feel that way, like if it seems to you like the people playing here are inviting you to join with them, with their choir, so to speak, to direct your music at God and turn it into something beautiful, even if it's simple, even if it's not the most musically complicated
mm,
thing there is, if it's simple and from the heart and it's going towards God and everybody's doing together,
yeah,
that's reverent.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of to me at least, and I'm no theologian,
sure.
but to me that's kind of like the heart of the musical part of worship,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, and then again, it comes back to it's not the fact that it's contemporary music.
No,
It's not the
no.
fact that it's new, but it's the fact that when you are in the presence of it, when you're in the presence of worship, it is self-evident
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it is beauty.
Let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
When I was living in LA, I moved from LA recently, but I was living in LA. One of the churches I visited, it's called Reality LA. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Mhm.
No.
Kind of a big church over there. Um, and the way they did worship, I hope you guys go visit at some point. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. You go in there, the worship starts, and the lights turn off, and you don't see the band.
Hmm.
You only hear the music. You don't see the singer going,
Yeah.
doing a performance.
Right.
You don't see the guitar player or whatever. You just hear the music, and the lights dim a little bit, and so on, and you can all join. It's not about the band.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not about the performers. It's about everybody singing together,
Partaking in something.
partaking, and offering collectively their worship to God. I went to visit that church. I'm getting moved now talking about it. I was moved to
Yeah.
tear. Like they played such beautiful music.
Mm.
And I felt like I was part of it. I wasn't just watching it, kind of like I was at a concert.
Mm.
I was part of it. They invited me to it because they didn't even show themselves.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Come in, let's all get together here and offer what we have to God." It was
Mhm.
so moving.
That's so
It was
awesome.
amazing. And I think that illustrates a little bit of what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to make me feel stuff.
Totally.
They weren't trying to emotionally manipulate me. They were just, and it was contemporary music. It was
Yeah.
like, it was like the processed piano and the
Yeah.
drums and the guitar and whatever. And it was so beautiful. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
And did you feel kind of the presence of the other people there too?
Yeah,
Could-
they were
could you
right
hear
there.
them? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you could hear them.
Yeah.
It was a nice big
Yeah.
space.
Mhm.
So it was like, it's like you were saying, you can tell immediately that
Yeah.
there's something
There's
different going on.
something.
And one of the results, yes, is that you feel stuff.
Yeah.
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 Right.
But it's like it's ancillary. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Sure.
I think that points on a good distinction. There is congregational worship and there is performative worship.
Yeah.
And the congregational style of worship is, I think, what we will all want to pursue,
Yeah.
where we're hearing the people around us coming together and
Yeah,
worshiping
that's so
God
good.
together,
Yeah.
as opposed to being an onlooker,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Watching the band perform
Mhm,
and just
mhm.
simply sitting there and observing what's
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on.
And
Well,
there's a place to watch the band perform.
Sure, that's called a
Right.
concert.
That's called a concert. And
outside
and
of church, right?
right.
Yeah.
And I would venture to say that is worshipful as well.
Totally agree.
But in a different way.
In a different way.
It's worshipful in the way
Yeah.
that you see somebody, like, if you go to a concert and you see somebody playing like this unbelievably amazing guitar solo, Oh my
John
gosh.
Mayer
John Mayer.
Yeah, John Mayer.
No, seriously.
crushing
Like
it.
you see somebody like at the edge of order and chaos,
Yeah.
Mhm.
playing a guitar solo. Like at any moment in time, the whole thing is gonna fall apart, and it doesn't.
Ah.
And it's like, boom. You're witnessing somebody walking the straight and narrow path
Yeah.
through their guitar
Interesting.
playing.
Yeah, that's very
That's
interesting.
that's watching a great musician play a concert.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's why you get moved, right?
But it's watching, right?
It's
not
watching.
participating.
It's watching and not participating. So that maybe shouldn't be happening at
Yeah.
church. And if it is, it should only happen like one time. I went to a church
Yeah.
where they would do that one song.
Yeah.
Somebody would come and sing an amazing song, and you would sit and not sing together with them. You
Yeah.
just watch. And then the rest of the songs, you guys would
Yeah.
sing together again.
Totally.
Well, I have an interesting anecdote about that too, because you brought up tracks at the beginning, and I
Not the tracks that people
Controversial.
hand
not
out.
not the
No,
tracks,
no, no,
yeah,
but it's very
tracks.
controversial.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so I was present at a worship service, church service that this particular venue at the church was the point of the venue was actually to be as loud and as concert like as possible.
Uh-huh.
That is the express purpose of this.
Yeah.
And it,
And
a
it's
very
a church with multiple
Yeah,
venues
church
of
with,
operation in the same
multiple
campus.
venues, and this particular venue was we're gonna be loud, we're gonna be a concert, there's gonna be lights going everywhere.
Yeah.
This is where you can get crazy. Two funny things about that was for as loud and as concert like as it was, looking around, nobody was really participating. And I say nobody. It was less than you would expect, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of people just observing.
Yeah.
Just observing the concert. And there was even a moment in one of the songs where it's a call and response.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember what the particular song
There
was,
was only
but it
call,
was
no response.
I sing this part and then you sing that part.
Uh-huh.
But the funny thing was it's so loud in this venue, you can't hear the congregation.
Mm,
So they actually put as a track the response part.
wow.
In the track of
pretty
the,
funny,
of the
right?
mix,
Yeah.
they put the response. So literally the part that's supposed to be the call and response, that's supposed to
Is
be the
still a call.
congregation worshiping, it's just a
Not
call.
happening. Yeah.
It's not happening.
So they're playing at you, right?
They're playing
It's
at
like
you.
if I came here on the podcast and the entire time I was just talking at you
Yeah.
instead of us having a conversation.
Totally.
Right.
And-
Which is kind of what I'm doing now.
And it's
but it's we've all had a conversation like that. What someone's just talking at you,
yeah.
Monologuing. if you
monologue,
will.
and
Yeah.
and it's like I don't want to be here. It's
No.
just all about you.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, okay. And I think that it's not the fact that this music is contemporary,
Correct.
but it does seem that it is a symptom of pop music, of the music industry,
Yeah.
of the way that we have changed our thought about what church
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go on this
But
subject
can I throw a hot take on that?
Please.
100%.
Okay, here's a hot take. I think the reason, so I think you're exactly right. It doesn't have to do with style necessarily. It's not that the music is contemporary and that's the problem.
Yeah.
I think, okay, here's a hot take. Societally, we have forgotten how to really engage with beauty.
Mm.
I think we've forgotten it wholesale. Like we've just forgotten how to do it. I think there's some very, I won't remember all the authors. There's one particular author. His name is Ian McGilchrist. Is anybody familiar with this guy? He's fascinating. Jonathan Pageau talks a lot about him. You guys are familiar with
Okay.
him.
Yeah.
And McGilchrist, his basic thing, I'm going to butcher it here, but it's like he's saying that there's a right side of the brain and there's a left side of the brain. One of the two sides has to do with, thinking like Ryan, who's
Yeah.
an engineer.
The artist
Right.
side and the engineer side.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the engineer looks at things and analyzes it and so on. And it's basically the kind of more, metrics oriented analytical side. And then there's the other side that's the kind of, whimsical or artistical side and whatever. His contention is that our society is completely on the analytical side and we have forgotten entirely about the other side.
I think that's
I
a
think that's
consequence
evident.
of the new atheist phase too, and maybe
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true.
yeah.
Perhaps.
I would actually argue that the new atheist phase is what has been a result of that.
Yeah.
You look at our
Been a result,
architecture
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
and what does that
Brutalism,
point
yeah.
to?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Churches and office buildings,
Yeah.
prioritizing the function of
Yeah.
the church in a location or the sound of a space.
Mhm.
The acoustics of an office building can be made to be way nicer than that of a big cathedral,
Yeah.
right? So we've brutalized even the
Hmm.
places that we are
Oh,
supposed to
man.
be reverent
Yeah.
and see beauty in.
Yeah. This guy's contention is that it goes back to the Enlightenment.
Mm.
The Enlightenment is the time when we start prioritizing the rationale,
Mm.
reason, right? Reason alone is what we need, and you get Descartes, right?
Yeah.
I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
Thinking is the main thing that a human being does, not feeling or not experiencing beauty
Yeah.
or not loving, but thinking. And so he traces it all the way back to that, and then it unfolds into the new atheist, and it unfolds into the this kind of, I don't know, obsessed with quantifying culture that we live in and so on. But I think it stems back to that. So that's my hot take
Yeah.
That's
for the
cool.
day. I may have others, but
No,
that's one of
and oh
them.
my gosh, like I think we touched on so many things that could branch off
Yeah.
into complete other conversations. It's almost frustrating to only to
To
only
have to
have
focus on this
Yeah.
one
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
But I mean that means that there's a lot more to talk about and a
Yeah.
lot more to discover. We appreciate this conversation. I think this was really really cool getting your perspective about music and
Do you have any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, let me throw one final thought
yeah.
out. Um, it's really fun to have this conversation about, what music is better. What does it mean to be beautiful or ugly as music? Is the contemporary Christian music worse or better than what?
Yeah.
Like, it's very interesting to quantify this stuff. And at face value, it may seem kind of pedantic. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's the guy who drinks a bottle of wine and he goes, "Ooh, this one is not expensive enough, and it,
Mhm.
it it wasn't made with the right grapes, so I
Yeah.
don't like it." This is not what this is.
Yeah.
I think some people do it like that, and I think they're treating it incorrectly. The reason why this conversation is important is this: we all think truth is important. It's important to live in a world where you understand that God made the world with truth, and truth is a thing that you need to understand and know. Otherwise, you're going to get walloped by it.
Mhm.
Yes, when you're living in accordance with truth, that's a good thing. Beauty is the same way.
Mm.
Beauty is like essential.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, if you don't know how to interact with that in your life, if you don't know how to listen to a piece of music and be moved, if you don't know how to like extract the goodness out of a poem, if you don't know how to watch a movie and like really like, get involved and immersed in a story, you're missing so much, so much of the experience of
Mm.
life, because you will miss those things in your life. Like when you have a baby or when you get married, or like when something beautiful happens in your life, it's going to go right over your head,
Mm.
and you're
Mhm.
going to live this kind of dull, numbed out life, and you're not going to know why. That's the reason this conversation is important.
Mhm.
It's not to be pedantic or to sound fancy at the parties or whatever. It's because this is kind of like, man does not live by bread alone, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that man lives by is beauty. We need to see it, we need to drink it, and we need to like, go into it, and because that beauty ultimately is the thing that creates in us the longing for God.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow.
100%.
Yeah.
And from that, like, I mean, this is our goal with these kinds of conversations is like you were saying, that we over prioritize reason and
Mhm.
thought and theology. There's plenty of content on the internet if you want to hear debates
Yeah.
about which tradition is the correct one. But we are called, we talked about this in church this weekend. Uh, Come and taste and see that the Lord is good
That's it. Yeah.
and partake in his beauty.
Right.
And if you don't feel that on a weekend, if you don't feel like you're being called to ascend to God's beauty
Mhm.
and feel that,
Yeah.
feeling is not wrong.
Right.
Feel, taste, and see that the
Right.
Lord is good.
It's not taste
That's the
and
beauty.
think about how good the Lord is.
Totally.
Yeah.
Is come and experience
Experience
it.
it.
Right. It's
Mhm.
right there in front of you. Yeah. That's
100%.
exactly what I'm talking
And
about.
that I think is at the core of worship.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Well, thank you, Vinny. This was great.
This has
Thank
been
you.
such an
Appreciate
amazing
it.
Yeah.
conversation.
Thank you. It's my
And
pleasure.
a huge shout out to our producer and our host for this space, Think Forever. Super grateful to get to have this space that we get to record in.
Thank you, Joe.
And we look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah. Likewise. Thank you.